So good evening, everybody. This is the Nagog Hill Orchard Ad Hoc Working Group meeting for May 11th, 2022. We're going to not recap our previous meeting because I had to cancel at the last minute, and I apologize for that. We're going to have group member and staff updates. Then we're going to discuss the RFP lease agreement and discuss next steps in general. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna actually start off tonight's meeting just because I know there's been a lot of questions amongst group members, and there's been some developments that I want to share, and I'll ask Joe to fill in anything that I might miss. So as you are aware, we had one applicant apply to the RFP, but it was not done through the proper process. The RFP, as you know, was to be submitted in multiple copies by hand delivery to the town clerk's office by noontime on the deadline date. The RFP came in by email. So unfortunately, we were not able to count it and accept it as submitted according to procurement laws. Joe did reach out to the applicant and informed them that their submission was not accepted for those reasons. It turns out that the applicant had COVID and that impeded their ability to deliver their package to town hall. They are planning to resubmit their application once the RFP is reposted. The select board did vote this past Monday to have Joe repost the RFP. There was some comments made that perhaps we should incorporate the addendums that were posted subsequent to the original posting of the RFP into this document now before it is reposted. And I'm going to talk to Joe about doing that if he has not already done so. As far as the applicant that did come forward, we cannot release the name of the applicant. All I can say to the group is that it is somebody local with an established business. So it appears to be an ideal applicant, but until we get that submission officially, there's nothing more that can be said about that individual or entity. So I hope that provides you with some sufficient information with respect to the RFP. Mr. Auger has vacated the house as of a few moments ago. The house is now vacant. I did tour the house this past week with Mr. Layden and Ed Mullen. The Augers were still in the house at that time. And it's actually in really good condition, in my opinion. It's in much better shape than I anticipated. There are certain things that need to be addressed, such as, electrical, HVAC, some plumbing issues. It looks like, according to Mr. Mullen, that the house is going to need a new roof and some gutters. But overall, it's in really decent condition. I was pleasantly surprised, I have to be honest with you. I know that members of this group would like to see the house, and we can make arrangements to do that. Maybe next week. I'll talk to the town administrator about that because I know that everybody would like to get in there and just take a look at it. So we can make those arrangements to do that. And that's all I have right now. I will talk more. Oh, actually, another thing I wanted to let you know is the town administrator called me today. He's talked with Highway and the Park and Recreation Department, and it looks like we might be able to get 3 or 4 18-year-olds to mow the orchard. We're going to use ARPA funds to buy some lawnmowers and pay them to do that as a summer job. They will be managed by the director of the highway department, as well as Mr. Ansaldi. So and the Park and Rec department as well. So he's working on pulling that all together. But that would be great if we can bring that to fruition. The other thing that I wanted to share too is I found out that our TC Bailey, who works for the Cemetery Commission, has a pesticide applicator license, commercial applicator license. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to use that license for the orchard. We don't have the equipment for it, and he is not that experienced with applying pesticides to a fruit orchard. So that would be something that we would have to look into a little bit further, and we are looking into that possibility of having him being able to do some applications to the orchard. And the only other thing I wanted to add, I know I'm dumping a lot of things on you guys, is when I was at the orchard, I was talking to Debbie Auger, and she mentioned Field 6 as having some Honeycrisp and other types of apples that were planted there that are really unique. And Joe, I don't know if you remember the names of those. She said something like Snow Crisp or something along those lines.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact name that she was referring to.
Right. It was one name and then they changed it to another name, but she said they were really unique apples. So Field 6 might be something that we want to take a closer look at, just to see what the condition of the trees are in that part of the property.
So, and so that you can just visualize where Field 6 is. And it's assuming that also, and I have every reason to believe that Debbie knows the number, so I believe her. So this is Field 6 right here.
Okay.
So someplace in there.
Okay. Right. Yeah. So we might want to just take a look at that part of the orchard. And that's all I have to share right now. So I'm just going to go through the line and just see if anybody has. Actually, Joe, I'll turn it over to you. Do you have anything that you want to add in furtherance of what I shared?
So the one thing to add was that Jenny is incorporating the addendum, so at least everything will be included. I've already posted it on the central register. Tomorrow I'll be taking care of the legal notice, making sure that's all lined up, and Jenny's supposed to get the final version to me so that at least we can put that on the website. I've already communicated to that one person that things will be going live, and let them know of the due date. I actually did indicate 1 day sooner than what's in the ad, so that at least I say get it by the 16th, not the 17th.
Okay.
But he did, just to reiterate what Cindy had said, he did reiterate his interest, and apologize for missing those details.
So that would be May 16th, right, Joe?
No, the deadline is going to be
June?
June 16th, June 17th at 10 a.m. So
we couldn't do a shorter publishing period?
No, because it's dealing with the basically property. Town council confirmed that it has to be the date of opening bids when it's a real estate transaction has to be a minimum of 30 days.
Okay.
So that literally is the 30th day. If I tried to in the system when you post, it will do that calculation. If I try to put in a date that's sooner, it says it's not valid. So that's the soonest. I've already made arrangements with Anthony so that he knows all those details as far as when things are going to be submitted. So
okay. All right, thanks. Amy, I'm going to start with you. Do you have any questions or comments?
No, I don't. Not at this time.
Okay. Jen, how about you?
I'm looking at what Joe sent us, the questions that he received and the answers that he gave. And I think a couple of questions I still have, like the tax burden. And I watched the Board of Selectmen meeting from Monday night, and the question came up, if the town owns the property, why are we charging the taxes? And I know we've discussed this as a group before, but in the change of the RFP, are we leaving that wording the way it was, where the new lessee will be responsible for taxes?
That's a really good question.
yeah, so for this, yes, just because we need to get it back on the street, but that doesn't mean that over this next couple of weeks, I would hope that the group would still be meeting and then inviting in Kathy Miller and town council to sort of revisit that and also identify what kind of flexibility there is. And then if that can be reduced, because the addendum that was submitted did identify a reduced $7,000 for what would be due for property taxes annually, and then an additional 12 if we lease out the house. So that's a item of discussion that definitely would recommend continue to investigate, to also better understand, whether or not there's any abatement processes that can be also included, since that was something that Kathy had said. There's some things that we can work out. So I think it's worthy of further follow-up, but if it ends up being something that gets reduced, that addendum can be pushed out. But at least I do know that that was not an issue as far as one of the respondents, that property tax that would have been due.
And for clarification, did Charles pay taxes?
No, and that was one of the things that town council had mentioned to us, Jen, during one of the meetings, that he was supposed to be paying taxes, and he wasn't. And I think it was an oversight. As Jenny started digging deeper into this whole situation, that came to light in some of the research that she had performed.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Sarah, do you have any questions or comments?
Yep. I first off want to start by thanking Joe for all your time and efforts. I know tomorrow's your last day with Littleton, but appreciate all your insight and attention to detail. So I want to thank you on behalf of the Littleton Conservation Commission, as I'm their appointed member. So I want to thank you for that. I do have a couple points of interest. One is a point of order that I have been contacted, and people are curious where the posted minutes are. So I went back in, and we have not approved minutes since January 12th. So going forward, we do need to follow open meeting law. So my questions include mowing, where the funds are coming from for those people, and is that coming out of the orchard budget going forward? I feel as though it's wonderful that we have someone that we as a committee don't know whether they're viable, inviable, but I feel as though we are now rushing to set forth a new RFP where I think the brakes should be applied a little bit to regroup and no longer have addendums and have a clean version of an RFP that someone can look at. And I'd like to know, basically, is the house going to be in or out? Because I think that's a really big value. And I think that it's an opportunity to stop, regroup, take another meeting or two, and get some of the legalese out, make it, as we've all talked about, a more user-friendly, viable opportunity. And my last point of interest is the fact that we've never requested to see the house as a tour. I think this committee requested to see the facility. So I think as a point of order for me, it's been just that, and I come back to what I've always said, and I said it to the select board in writing, that there's a lack of trust and transparency. So that's kind of where I am, and look forward to comments. Thank you.
Okay. So Sarah, I'm just going to respond to your comments. I agree with you about minutes. And Joe, I don't know if you have any minutes prepared, or if Amy, if you've prepared anything.
No, I didn't realize I was supposed to be doing that. I know Joe had been taking care of it for a while, so.
Yeah, so
Right.
I'll touch base with Amy. There's maybe one of those things that we divide up a couple, because the last 3 meetings have been rather short. And then there's the 4 before that were longer ones. So I am working through those. One way or the other, come up with a plan for finishing whatever can't be done. So if the meetings that are basically 45 minutes, and they're all posted on the town's LCTV website. one of the things that we can also do is just make sure that for each of those, we are able to embed those links. So if someone had a question as far as, well, what was discussed, we can also ask IT to put direct links for those videos, even if the minutes aren't approved yet. But I'll work with Anthony and Cindy just to identify a plan to finish up some of those longer meetings that we had.
Right, and honestly, Joe.
Also, as a point of order, we did not enable closed captioning when we have our meetings. So if someone's looking for a written document, I don't believe the Zoom.
Do we do closed captioning on all our meetings, Joe?
No, you have to request it.
Yeah, no, we don't have closed captionings, not with that's something that's specific through the webinar license. At least that's my understanding, that LCTV then manages.
Okay, so honestly, one of my skill sets is transcription, and I can blow through the minutes and no problem at all. I do this all the time. So I have no problem tackling that task. I'll follow up with you, Joe, on that.
Okay, sounds good.
And get those all in a good form
Yep.
for the group to review. As far as Sarah's question regarding the mowing of the orchard, we're gonna use ARPA funds for that, to pay for that expense. According to Anthony, with respect to seeing the house, those were comments that were made to me by members of this committee one-on-one. So if we can certainly plan a site walk of the entire facility, if that is what the group would prefer that we do, that's not an issue. And then as far as the RFP goes, one of the things we talked about at the select board was posting the RFP presently as written to get it back out there, but in conjunction with that, also having this group rework it and make it more, quote, user-friendly. I agree with Sarah on that, that it definitely needs to be refined, and it can definitely be better. I personally am not in favor of, waiting 2 more weeks to rework that document and then repost the RFP. We can certainly do it in tandem to the posting, especially since the deadline's not till June 16th. Get it out there now, work on it, and then within the next 2 weeks, we can post that as an addendum, right, Joe?
Yeah, you could, but I think also there may be a larger discussion that you want to then have, and take the time to get that right without reposting. And as I mentioned to the select board, by reposting and then allowing the person who submitted after the deadline to submit, doesn't mean that the select board has to even enter into negotiations. It's just any sort of consideration. And because we only got that one, if to even have an opportunity to have a discussion, that could only happen after receiving a response from the RFP.
So,
Right,
Madam
but I
Chair,
guess my question is, excuse me 1 second, Sarah. I
Yep,
guess my question is, if we rework the RFP, can we then post it as an addendum to the RFP that's been out there?
It would really depend on what changed. If you pulled out a lot of the legalese and then had it as attachments, that's one thing. If all of a sudden you restructured the terms and all those things,
Right.
I then would refer to what town council would recommend, whether it could be or would represent a change in what was originally posted as part of the original RFP.
Right, and I think that's something that, as we have that discussion about the RFP, that will come to light. My thought process was, it's not changing really any of the content, it's just making it more user-friendly. I think a lot of it's too voluminous. I mean, there's so much information in there where I think, with some of the legal terms and things like that, you could just refer to the legal site. And if people want to, get information about environmental laws, they can then just go to Mass General Laws and look at that site, just to maybe make the document more user-friendly. That was my thought. That's why I circulated it to everybody, along with the questions that we did get in that were submitted to Joe, just so maybe if members of the group want to go through it and just make notes about things that you think could be simplified or just formatted differently without really changing the content.
Cindy, respectfully, this committee has spent hours already doing that. it's incredibly frustrating to not see that reflected in the dialogue in the RFP. We've all spent a lot of time on this, and quite frankly, I can't see myself spending any more time because it's going to go to town council. It's going to become what she made it before through no fault of hers. I mean, I understand it's a legal document, but I just don't see the point of us spending any more time on that because we keep footballing it back and forth. So I personally don't see what good it's going to do for us to talk about it. We all agree on the issues, that it's too voluminous. I don't know what else to do. Maybe we should just hand it over to Jenny because we've certainly put a lot of time and effort into this already.
Right. Okay, fair enough, Jen. Okay,
So, Madam Chair, I'd like to put a motion on the floor to the committee.
okay,
So I would like to make a motion that the RFP be delayed for 2 weeks so that we have an opportunity to change and go back to original wording with no addendums, and that we can have a clean slate of what is offered.
So Sarah, just to clarify what I think you said, you're basically looking to take the addendums and incorporate them in and leave it at that, not then send it over to legal counsel?
So there's no requirement to send it back to legal counsel because legal counsel has already reviewed this document.
right,
What I want to do is to make it a clean document with no addendums and be quite straightforward with what is in or out. The house, real estate taxes, no more addendums, and that someone can actually read one document and that there's not a hoop that you have to actually log in to see a document. It comes through with transparency. So my motion is to exclude addendums, incorporate them, and to be able to come up with what we're actually looking for. And if someone at the last minute, obviously, you know, they can wait a couple more weeks. So that's my motion. If anyone wants to second it, or we just go on.
all right, Sarah made a motion. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Yeah.
So now we can discuss. Just one point, all the addendums are being included into a revised final document, including the separation as far as the property tax that is associated with all of the land with the exception of the house, and then what it would be with the house. I think the challenge is that it still comes down to right now, while the house is in better condition than we anticipated, and quite honestly, I expected to be dealing with a huge clean out operation. I think that's what a lot of us expected. But we do know that we need to look at electrical. We need to look at plumbing. We are making arrangements for our heating and cooling company to go in and to look at the 2 boilers that look at the condition and also put together a proposal on what it would cost to replace. We also have to go through, there's some convoluted wiring that they gerrymandered together that we're going to have to address. So that's the only thing, like, we want to be able to go through, do that and take care of that, and then be able to say, and then at that point we can make it available. That's the only, I think, challenge that we're faced with by that sort of gets in the way of saying house is 100% in.
Yeah, it's not a matter of if the house will be available, it's a matter of when it will be available.
Right.
But you can also make the house available as an office to get started and rip out whatever's been monkeyed in there. So I feel as though the house offers an extreme benefit to whomever may view this. And I feel as though going forward, that person should be able to have a place where they can have an office. If they want to live eventually, that's fine. But I don't feel as though we have to then keep waiting for all these inspections, things to occur. So that's my thoughts.
Right.
Yeah.
And Sarah, I don't disagree with you on that, but I mean, there's certain things in the house that need to be mitigated. And then there's work that needs to be done when the tenant is in the house. I mean, it's going to be an ongoing process, no doubt.
So you're saying the work wouldn't be done by June 17th? So that
Not all of it, no.
Right. So then I think we need to understand, I mean, the roof is obviously something different. It probably doesn't have to be done tomorrow, but
There's some plumbing issues, there's some mold in the house, there's some electrical issues, that those probably need to be addressed first. And Joe's point, the HVAC needs to be addressed. So we're working on lining up those contractors to get in there. I've already talked to Ed Mullen about that as well, and just getting the ball moving on that. Now, as of today, is the first time we've been able to get into the house to begin that work. So we're going to start that process now.
Yeah, and just to, to Sarah's point, we have someone who's going to be doing the mowing. So that's a great resource. And, at this point, we don't have anyone to spray. That may or may not happen. So I think sort of like this window in sort of orcharding to like growing the apples is sort of like passing us a little bit. In the orchard, the crop will be what the crop will be this fall. So sort of, I agree with Sarah, just sort of slowing down the process to get the RFP sort of straight and easy and simplified to understand. But also just time to allow for some other applicants to come in as well. There's no harm in waiting for that. I mean, we can't go back a few weeks and spray. We can't get that time back. It's nice to hear that there's someone local who's a strong candidate. It would have an alternative to look at. I just want to be hesitant of jumping at the first person who comes in because, the farm is essentially, the town is essentially farming. I know this is a difficult task for the town to manage. We don't necessarily have the resources to hand, but I agree with Sarah, just slowing it down so we can hand it off to the right person makes sense.
Okay, so other than incorporating the addendums into the RFP, what other changes do we anticipate will be needed with the RFP? We can't answer the tax question until we bring in the tax assessor and town council. So that would be something that we could schedule next week or within the next coming weeks, that, depending on their schedules. Is there any other areas that are jumping out at anybody with respect to the RFP that they feel they would want to see changed?
Well, honestly, I come back to the fact that the committee's never seen the barns, walk the property, exclusive of the house. The house is not in the conversation. I think the committee would need to see it to basically either feel good about the RFP or feel as though, wow, this is really daunting. So I think to go forward, we need to start back at neutral to understand how either desperate the committee is or if we feel really good about it. So that can help determine the terms of the agreement.
Yeah,
there's one thing with the RFP, but the lease agreement is a totally separate document that's going to be worked out through negotiations with the select board.
I recognize, but the tone can be reflective of both documents.
I don't understand, Sarah. What tone? You mean the tone?
I'll pass on that comment. Thank you.
So one of the things, and Cindy, stop me if this is not something we're supposed to, in the notes that you gave us, the gentleman had some questions. And one of them was around the cost of bringing the structures, up to par. I don't know what we can do to the RFP to kind of address that issue. I have to agree that the infrastructure and the outbuildings need a lot of work. And that person already sort of identified that. I think that might need to be addressed. And again,
the time frame to get somebody in there and assess the condition of the barns and what it's going to cost to repair them it's just going to take too long to get that done. And as Joe put in his responses, and as it stated in the RFP, people are more than welcome to come out and make that assessment on their own. You know, we just don't have that information right now.
Thank you.
All right, so Sarah's got a motion on the floor to delay the posting of the RFP for 2 weeks. There was a second, so we'll go forward with the vote on that. Amy Tarla-Lewis,
Yes.
Will Pickard,
Abstain.
Jen Clancy,
Yes. Yes.
Sarah Seward,
Yes.
and I'm going to abstain. So we have 3 yeses and 2 abstentions. So the motion passes as proposed. So we will delay posting the RFP for 2 weeks. Okay. And so now how do we want to approach making the, Joe's already going to incorporate the addendums into the actual RFP. How do you want to approach the other areas of the RFP that you want to address? So why don't we do this? Why don't we schedule a facility walk next Wednesday, probably earlier in the evening than our regularly scheduled meeting? I don't know if that works for members of the group, since that was one of the areas that you said you wanted to cover before we proceed with looking at the RFP. So would next Wednesday work for the group to do that?
Works for me.
Works for me.
Works for me. And Joe, I know that your time is limited with us, but if you could send us a clean draft, that would be awesome.
I'll be getting,
That has the addendums incorporated.
town council is getting that to me tomorrow.
Will, are you available Wednesday?
I'll do my best. I can't confirm right this moment.
Okay, and I'll have to talk with, I'll talk with Ed Mullen and see if he can attend that with us. Maybe we can schedule that for 5:30 next Wednesday, as opposed to waiting till later in the evening, just so that we have time to walk the property and we have to be able to get into the house too. All right, so we'll do that. And then we'll schedule Kathy Miller and Jenny to come in and talk to the committee the following Wednesday about the tax piece of the RFP. That was another area of concern of the group.
Is there a way that we can consolidate that all into a meeting, or that they can give us their thoughts or their findings through email? So we just extended it 2 weeks, and if we're going to wait till next week, just curious if there's a way to consolidate.
Well, I just don't even, I mean, yeah, we could do it through an email. If you want to actually, yeah, we can do it through an email. I'm just trying to think of what more information they can provide that they haven't already provided. But I guess just to see if there's a reduction in the taxes, will we be able to do that? And have a stay on the taxes for them, for the potential lessee. Is an abatement possible? I can do that through an email to them and ask them those questions. Are there any other questions you want to ask town council and Kathy Miller about the taxes?
Is there any other properties that we would have to compare that to where that occurs, like a example?
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Is there anything else that you guys want to have addressed as far as the RFP goes?
So we're going to get the RFP and go through it, and then it goes to town council, and town council is going to correct.
We don't need
can
to
or
send it
cannot
back to
say,
town
or-
council, Will, because I don't anticipate, if we get the answer about the taxes, if the addendums get incorporated into the document, I don't think that there's anything else that we're going to change that's going to require, town council's approval, to be honest with you.
We discussed some of the legalese, and I'm just curious. I assume that that's in there because it needs to be, so I
Right. And we won't be taking that legalese out. And I'll talk to Jenny about that too, as opposed to putting in, like I said, all of the environmental laws. Can we just quote that? Can we just say, as referenced in blah, 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 and see and give them the site where they can look for that information, as opposed to actually incorporating all that information into the document. And I can talk to her about that. That's what you mean, right?
correct. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Is there anything else as far as that goes? As far as the RFP is concerned? All right. So we're going to push off the posting date for 2 weeks. We're going to meet next week on site.
So because we're meeting on site and it's an open meeting, I know we're going to do a tour, but we can still conduct business. Granted, it can be outside, but still we can still carry on the meeting. So just to.
Yeah, if we post for that, Sarah, we can.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. That would be my suggestion, that it's posted that we walk, we're all together, there's going to be dialogue, and we can have agenda for that meeting.
Okay. All right, I agree. Okay. Okay. And, all right, general discussion of next steps. I think we have our next steps.
Cindy, I do have one question. Will we be trying to refill Paul Glavy's seat with another Board of Select person?
Yeah,
That's going to be on the agenda for the 23rd.
the 23rd too. And everything that we're talking about as well here, since we are an advisory group to the select board, I'm going to have to bring back to the select board on the 23rd. Because the select board did vote to repost the RFP at our meeting on Monday. So now we're sort of circumventing that vote of the board.
Will we be trying to make an appointment for an additional agricultural commission person, Will, as well, to fill the actual committee back to the original plan?
Yep, we can do that. Yeah, if we can absolutely do that.
Thank you.
And we'll have to post for that as well. We actually already discussed that, and the board did agree on that a few meetings ago. Okay. So I'll talk to Ed Mullen about meeting with us on site next Wednesday. Hopefully he's available to walk the property, get a better idea of the barns. I also want to look at the facility itself and see about water, what water access there may or may not be to the outbuildings at this point. And I will send out an email to Kathy and Town Council about the taxes and possible abatement, get other examples from other communities if possible. And then we're going to get going on getting some contractors in there to address the issues that we know of with respect to the house itself. And then I'll keep the group posted too about the mowing and see if that comes to fruition. Hopefully it will.
Yeah, Cindy, and just to throw it out there, so Newton Community Farm in Newton, obviously, they have a house on that property, and that property is town owned. And so Newton Community Farm leases it from the town, and their farmer lives and his family live in that house. That might be a similar model to look at, perhaps. In terms of like taxes, like I don't know if the farmer pays the taxes or like how that.
Okay.
It's just a similar model. I mean, there might be some lessons learned there.
What's the name of the farm?
Newton Community Farm, you said?
Newton Community Farm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kathy's currently on vacation. She'll be back next week. So what I'm doing is just sending her an email, asking her to get in touch with the assessor over in Newton, because then they'd be able to identify, what they do.
Yeah, and Sue, I can't remember her last name. Sue is the executive director there. I mean, she might be able to tell you what they do. So,
Okay. That's
Can I
a good
ask
meeting.
a quick question of Will along that same guideline? With Carlisle over at Great Brook, was that the same type of setup where he leased as tenant for the town that owned? I know it started a long time ago, but
The state owns it. It's not, I believe everything he does is through the state, not the town. Now,
Okay.
don't ask me there's a state park, and his dealings, I think, is with MDR on the facilities.
Okay. I didn't know with the Cranberry Bog if that was all still state. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else from the group?
And Joe, you'll get us that clean copy?
Yep, once I get it from town council tomorrow.
He will.
Thank you.
And I'm actually, to be as full transparency, I'm going to have to go back to the select board now and tell them about this vote. And I won't be able to do that and have a discussion about it until the next meeting. But they did vote at our meeting Monday to repost the RFP. So I don't know that we as an advisory group can circumvent the vote of the select board. So that's something that I'm going to have to look into.
Yeah, no, it's a great point of order. I don't think you can. So, but I'd be interested to hear about it.
Okay. All right, good. So we'll plan on meeting at the Orchard next Wednesday at 5:30. If anything changes with that, I will let you know. And I'm going to follow up with Joe too on the meeting minutes and get those prepared and out, ready for review for our next meeting.
great, thank you.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I second it. First it. I don't
So
even know
moved.
the rules. Yes.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn made and seconded. All those in favor, Will Pickard,
Aye.
Sarah Seward,
Sarah Seward, a motion to adjourn at 7:14.
all right, Sarah just made another
Yep.
motion. Second,
Yep.
anyone?
You just have to have the
I'll
time.
second it.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Jen Clancy,
Yes, aye.
Amy, Tyler
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
All right, and Cindy Napoli is aye, and that concludes our meeting for this evening. And I do want to actually echo Sarah's comments and thank Joe again for all your help, especially with this project. You went above and beyond. So thank you so much. We're
Yes.
certainly going to miss you.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Joe.
Joe.
Thanks.
All right, good night.
All right.
Good night.